Alright, so I'm going to try to do a super quick build guide on the Rook Mk1. Hopefully it goes pretty good. I'll try to explain stuff like as best as I can. Alright, so I guess let's just start with all the parts really quick. The bottom frame, you can tell because it has the Z motor on it. Top frame. There's the bed. I guess the bed frame. We have a MCU mount for the SKR Mini E3. There's like at least one for probably like the Manta M4P and M8P probably. Idlers. We have the Speedy V idlers as well with Gulsifer's logo on them. The motor mounts. A and B motors. We have 4 feet, also with Gulsifer's logo on them. I don't know how well you can see that, but pretty bad. Whatever. The carriages, or I guess like idlers for the Gantry. And then probably one of the stars of the show. Also, one of Gulsifer's mods is the Rookery. It has 3 pieces. The fan duct that I just showed. The key that goes, slides right inside like that. And then the belt, the cradle. Moving on to tools, you're going to want a rag for cleaning up the rails. If you want to keep your hands clean, grab some gloves. Flush cutters for like zip ties and stuff. Maybe trimming off like defects on your parts. You probably won't need these, but calipers. This is my M3 Allen wrench, but you're also going to want one like this. There's a couple screws that you're gonna need to, that just like a bigger one won't let you get to. Phillips head screwdriver, flathead screwdriver. These are more for like the MCU, but you'll still need them later on. Tweezers, these can be helpful like with shims, definitely, and then also like routing the belts a little bit around the idlers and then like through the bed frame. White lithium grease. From what I understand, PTFE is pretty good too, but just something that's not gonna like clog up the bearings too much, but you're not gonna want to use oil either. It's just gonna run pretty much all over. A lighter, this will be like later on, but just for heat shrink. And I guess I forgot the M5 Allen wrench. So that's all I have here. That's probably not going to be everything you'll need. Let's see. Okay. See, I'm already forgetting something. If you're using Gulsifer's Rookery, you're going to need a soldering iron. This is just like a JST or maybe XHT wire crimp. And then I would have to look at what this is called, but this is for the end of wires. It'll pinch all of them together. It's better than solder, so if you have one, definitely use it. Okay, so I already have my rails pretty cleaned off. like all the factory oil has been wiped off of them. I just used isopropyl alcohol to get these prepped back up a little bit. One sec. First, your carriages should have a little gap in between the bearings, just about one ball of spacing. And all I really do is just go down the sides of the bearings and try to get some on the underside too. That's probably way too much already, but whatever. And I'm not really gonna flip this upside down because I still don't want any of the bearings to fall out, so I'm gonna actually just flip the rail upside down. And if this will slide on, slide this carriage on here. So it left a ton of buildup at the end, and this is why we have the rag down here. Move it around a little bit, and basically you can see that there's a tiny bit of grease inside of the bearings, but most of it already just got pushed off. So you're gonna want to repeat this a couple times just to kind of get it in there. If you need to smush it in with your fingers, that might work better already. Repeat it down the rail. And then I'm actually going to just take this little bit of excess grease and then just lightly wipe down like the whole rail. I'm not going to get excess inside of the groove here, but just enough to like coat it a little bit. So let's just say this is good. We're going to want to make sure this is evenly packed. And just take all the excess with a rag, and then that little bit inside of the bearings we're going to leave. I'm going to repeat that with all three of our carriages. Right, so similar to the carriages, we have our LM8 W45 bearings, so we want to kind of get those a little bit prepped as well, and you're just going to want to kind of stick some in there, maybe on both sides. Take our linear rods, make sure you don't push it all the way through, kind of try to drag it around. Spin it around, try to get some of the grease inside of the bearings. These bearings are really small, so it's going to be a little harder to get inside of there, but it's going to be pretty smooth. You want it to be, at least. And then once again, just wipe it off. And for two of them, try to get a small coating of grease all the way down it. The best you can, at least. Yeah, well, my table's full, so I'm not going to do that right now, but okay, now that we at least have the bearings like slightly prepared, please do it like better than that was. But actually we're going to want to put this face side down, where like the larger holes are on the top side probably. Put it in the center here. But now we're going to install our LM8 bearings. So it's really simple. There is a mod that actually just has 2 screws in the back, so these will clamp down, but mine fit pretty nicely inside. Just give it a decent bit of pressure, kind of push it flush with the bottom. You might need to push it farther through, like that, but just to start out, and just have it flush like that. Move on to the second bearing, same thing. And that's it for the bearings on the bed. I want to start by showing you these inset nuts inside of the frame, or small cutouts for them, for the M3 nuts. There's like 10 to 15 of those around the frame. But I'm actually going to move to the bottom frame first. This would probably be the first part that I would like to start on. So I'm not actually going to install one of these right now, but you have a few options for end stops. This is a Creality style one, and then this is just an on-run like clicky switch. Both of them just require 2 wires, and it's normally the outside too. So I'm going to put these off to the side for right now because I'm not going to install one right now, but you might want to. So going back to the inset nuts, or the cutouts, you have one right here. It's kind of hard to get to, but that's for your Z motor tension. And then this is in M3 by 16. You can use probably an M3 by 10, and that will be fine as well. So I'm going to just get it started into the nut, and you don't really need to do anything more than that for right now. Just make sure your nut didn't push out on the outside, and that might be too far in, so maybe I'll back it out a couple times. But if that was long enough to tension your motor, that's just the amount that you have sticking out. I'm going to put this down really quick. And I'm going to move on to the next step. Alright, so we're going to mount the SKR bracket, the E3 mini bracket. Like I said before, I think there's a couple other one of these available. And this is 4 M3 by 16 screws. Set these out. Okay, so I'm not verifying that this is the right way. Shoot. Let me double check and make sure that this is the correct direction. Alright, so as I have it right now, I actually have it on backwards, compared to at least what Rolohaun has it as in his CAD. So I think it'll work both ways, but we're gonna just flip it around just to make sure everything's good. So let's take a second here to screw all these in. You don't want to go overly tight. This screwdriver, if you can hear it, it's already struggling to put in these screws, so yeah, and it just stopped before it was even tight. So just hit the bottom and stop. The other one, for these screws, you can probably go shorter than 16, but that's fine. So this is going to make sure that it's at least solid onto there. I mean, like, the actual MCU is not a lot of weight, but just in case like you ripped on a wire, you wouldn't want to have too short of screws to just pull off your whole motherboard. This one's pretty stiff to get in. I kind of got to crank it, so I'm not too worried about this one stripping out. Alright, there we go. Awesome. Okay, so let me grab my next parts, and we're moving on to the feet. So I'll put my M3 out of the way, and we're moving on to 8 M5 by 16 screws. And then if you're using the 15 or 25 millimeter like rubber feet, you're gonna need 4 more. So that would be 12 total, 12 M5 by 16 millimeter screws. So these just line up on the edge of the frame, and there's 2 screws in each foot on all 4 corners. So this should take a second. Probably once I get these mounted, I'll cut back. Okay, so I have all 4 feet installed, and I just want to show you that like the corners right here, or on the bottoms of the feet, there's another like set hole for 4 more M5 screws, and that's where your rubber feet go. Oops. Okay, so we are already ready to install our linear rods. And mine are just sliding right in. Just push them in a little bit farther. If you have to tap in them, that should be fun. They shouldn't be too hard though. Okay, so I'm gonna just move this off to the side. And we're gonna move on to the top frame really quick, just to prepare it. So before, like I showed, the nuts inside, so there's 8 total. Those are down the line a little bit, but I just want to get you familiar with those. Okay, so let's move on to the top frame. I'm just be doing the Z idler right here, or a little bearing stack. So it's gonna go screw, I'm just gonna get it started into the frame. So that's a bit much. I'm gonna back it out. I'm going to put in a shim, a washer, and you can see our screw's not quite sticking out anymore. Just turn it in. Shim in between the bearings. And then for the last shim, I'm going to just use tweezers. hold your hand on the backside and hopefully we can get it to line up. Just gonna shake it around and it seems like it's all good. This has like a decent bit to go into the frame, so I'll just give it a tiny bit of a extra turn and then just make sure that they spin freely. Alright, so I set the bottom frame back on the table. We have the top frame, and mine is the smooth side up and the nuts face down. And then you're going to take your Z motor and your Z idler and get all of your rods to slide into the hole. Go perfectly flush on all four corners. Alright, moving on to the motor mounts. You need 2 M3 nuts, 2 M3 by 18 screws, and then for the sides, 2 M3 by 10 screws. So the nuts go on the back side by the idler, well actually in the corners, but on the same side as the idler, and just press those into place. Just like that, one in each of the back corners. And then we'll take our M3 by 18, put it into the back side of the motor mount. And that one you can tighten down pretty good. Take one of our M3 by 10s. And then on the side, I'm going to repeat this for the other side. That's it for right now. I'm going to move on to building the front idlers. I'm going to move on to the front idlers. I'm going to use one of the Fabrico ones to save myself some time, but maybe show you a little bit better on the first one. But we're going to need an M5 by 30 millimeter. I'm pretty sure 25 millimeter will work as well. And then per idler, there'll be 4 of our 695 flanged bearings. And then as well on each side, we're going to need 5 M5 shims. Okay, so on the Fabrico one at least, it's going to be a screw, if I don't drop it, shim with the flange facing top side, bearing, another shim, bearing with the flange facing away, which gives us a little channel for the belts to go through. Another shim, bearing, shim, bearing facing away again, and then finally another shim. So we'll go screw, shim, bearing, shim, bearing, shim, bearing, shim, bearing, shim. And that's an idler. Oh, oh, oh. Alright. Don't do that. And that's a finished idler. Okay, going on to Rolohaun's design. Same thing as the Fabrico idler, but there's the top. So we're going to start this in. Similar to how we did the idler stack on the top frame. Screw through, shim, and we're just going to kind of push the screw up as we go along, as we build it up. Bearing, can't see the shim through or the screw through the bearing anymore. Kind of hold it, get the screw to pop up some more. Another bearing on top. And this is where it'll get a little bit trickier. So don't do that. Drop the shim right on top. Leave just enough room to drop your bearing in. So in terms of rigidity, I don't know if the Fabrico kit is better, but in terms of installation, this idler is definitely a little bit easier, just dropping all of the parts onto the screw. Get a shim on top of that bearing again. And this is where it gets a little bit snug. And we just pushed it out. So I might have to cut for this part and just show you the finish. Okay, maybe we'll just kind of pull the screw back out. See if we can get the bearing to go on it like that. Okay, sweet. Try to screw this back up some more. Okay, so it seems like it just about hit the plastic. I'm gonna back it out just like 2 turns. And just kind of slide this in, if it's possible. Okay, kind of the same thing for the bearing. I'm going to just push a little pressure on the screw until I back it out far enough for it to align itself inside. Maybe take the tweezers to slide it in a little bit. Okay, Okay, it seems like the screw isn't quite far enough out yet. See if we can kind of just get the screw to align it all. Finally. Alright, so it's not really that hard, but you do have to be a little bit patient with it. And like I said, this is like an M5 by 30. You can use an M5 by 20, but you could also go all the way up to like an M5 by 45 probably. Sorry if that was loud. Alright, pretty tight. All the bearings spin nicely. Okay. Have both of our idlers. Ideally, don't mismatch them. Back up to the top. Probably gonna want me to flip this like that. Does it fit? No. Okay. Alright, so I moved this up here so we can install the idlers. We have two M3 by 16s and then two M3 by 10s. So I already have this one started. So the M3 by 10 goes right here on the side. Just go until it stops. And the M3 by 16 right here. Once again, M3 by 16 in the front. Until it stops. M3 by 10 on the side. This should be pretty smooth, but mine is just a little bit bumpy because my printer has rain around the screw holes, so like on the corners here. If it's not completely flat or square when you put these on, just sand it down a little bit. Alright, so we're going to move on to the rail install. Screws go into the nuts on the bottom of this hot frame. There's 4 per side, and you can use MGN 9C by 150, but these are 200 millimeters that I'm using, and they just snugly fit into place like that, and you're gonna kind of pull up and press down to make sure that your linear rods are pressed up against the rails a little bit. Grab out my screws. And these are 8 M3 by 25 screws. M3 by 25. And we need 8 of them. So this will go into our rail, which we cannot put on yet. Would that not be a critical mistake? Putting on your rail without a carriage. Alright, let's pry this back off. Once again, I'm not going to flip the carriage. I'm going to flip the rail and slide it on. Now we can go ahead and start our M3 by 25s. One at the end, actually skip a hole, skip a hole. You can just snug these down, you don't really have to go tight, especially right now. Later down the road, yes. Skip a hole, screw, skip a hole, screw. Turn it around. Do not forget my carriage this time. Upside down, slide it on, have a bit of extra grease, wipe it off. Skip a hole, screw. Skip 2. Okay, so I went until it stops, but I'm actually going to back all these off a half turn. Half turn, half turn, half turn, half turn, and that's going to give us like just a tiny bit of wiggle room here. And you're going to need that when we install on our gantry. Okay, so we're going to move right into installing the carriages for the idlers for the Y axis, if I can find them. Okay, so might look like you can install these after, which you might be able to, but your bearings are going to get in your way, so we need to install these on first. With the rail mount facing the back side, we're going to use 6 M3 by 6 screws to screw these in. And this will be into the carriage of the linear rail. Yeah, don't do that. You're actually going to want to probably start these. Alright, Just use a tweezers, it's gonna be easier. Maybe. Set it into the hole, Allen wrench through the top, and just get it barely started on. Move on to the next one. And one more. So there's 3 per side. And this one, we have the hexagon cut out. Just go right through the back there. I just want to get these started. You don't want to go through. So it's like lifting it up. Like those will probably be just perfect. Just enough to get it lined up on the carriage. I don't know, something like that. Oh, we're way off. Alright, back that out a little bit. Right there. And this is why I said earlier you need this style of Allen wrench to fit through these tiny holes. Oops. These screws you can go ahead and tighten down. Nice and smooth. Repeat for the other side. Next, we're gonna move on to probably the most fun part of the build. Not actually, so we'll see how it goes. We're gonna need 8 of our 695 bearings. The build of materials calls for flanged ones, but I'm using flangeless ones. We're gonna need 10 more of our M5 shims, and I have 2 started here already, but 4 total M5 by 25 screws. So hopefully you can see this okay. I'm gonna start the screws just like we started the front idlers up here. Actually gonna use this box to prop up the bottom as well. Alright, so start with our shim, bearing, wanna hold it, and screw in a bit farther. Jeez. Alright, so I just got this one finally together. It didn't actually take me that long, but I don't want to have you guys sit through it. The best way I can explain, and the easiest way for you to do it, is keep backing out your screw and then turning it in as you get a new piece. So yeah, this one's done, and it goes shim, bearing, shim, bearing, shim. I'm going to just tighten this one down. Check the bearings, make sure that they spin freely, and then this outside bearing stack will be good to go. I'm going to try to move on to the inside one now. Get my screw started a bit more. A little less than halfway. Shim. Bearing. Screw it in a tiny bit more. A little bit past your bearing, so you have enough room to barely squeeze on a washer. So it has a nice big area to sit on. And then since it's too far in, we're not quite going to be able to slide this in. But we'll just kind of rest it right there. Back it out, and then right when there's enough room, we'll get it in. Just like that. And then the shim might be a little bit trickier on the ends. But same thing. Alright, so it just kind of slid in there, so the screw must not be far enough in. And I might have just pushed it too far, but hopefully it all lines up, which it seems like it did. Tighten it down. The washer's falling out. And that is the left side of our gantry done. Just be a pain like that sometimes, but it's not that big of a deal. Slid right in, so that's nice. Alright, so I'm getting close to being done with this last bearing stack. And I just want to say that earlier, I think I said 10 shims, but there's actually 12. And this shouldn't be too difficult for you. Move it around so it's in a position that's not awkward for you, because right now I have to reach across the table for this. Looks like it's centered enough to just kind of force it in with the screw now. Yeah, so I must have just had it in too far, and it didn't even catch going on the way in, so that is all 4 of our Gantry bearing stacks completed. I'm a little bit of an extra turn, but nothing too much. Perfect. Moving on to the final pieces in our second parts bin. Let's see what we have. So I guess I just want to show a couple mods really quick. This is our gantry crossbeam that would go right here. It just allows you to add more screws to it and stiffen it up a bit. And then I just want to show you Gulsifer's mod. Well, another one of his at the bottom. And this is just to cover it up. Normally this is a little different, but it has the logo, the nice Rook logo all the way across. Alright, so I'm not going to be using those right now, but I just wanted to point those out. I'll put like a link in the description for both of those and any other mods that I show in this, but I'm just going to do a completely stock build right now. Alright, moving back to the gantry. To install our linear rail, we need 4 M3 by 12 screws. Take our linear rail, make sure we have a carriage on, put the rail upside down, slide on the carriage. Take our M3 by 12 and put it into the farthest screw hole of our 150mm MGN9C. And the 12mm will just have enough to stick out the back here. So I'm going to just hold that right over the hole. Take my M3 Allen on the front. Get it just a bit snug. Gently let it fall for a second. Alright, I turned it sideways really quick so I can actually see something. I'm gonna go to the farthest screw hole on the left side now. And just slide the gantry into place. Take one of our 4 nuts on the back side. Barely get it started. And snug it down. Don't go crazy yet. Gotta get 2 more in. Alright, so when you're tightening these screws down, you don't actually just want to kind of let it sit in place. It has a little bit of free movement. I'm just going to kind of take like a straight edge across and just kind of pinch up against that a little bit to try to get it as level as possible before you snug it down. You can kind of adjust it later because it's just these 4 screws. And the screws happen to be right in the middle of the belts, so it's pretty easy. I don't have pliers, but if you have like little wire snips or a little needle nose pliers, this is ideal. Over flush cutters. Snug them down a little bit. Looking at this, these look like these could be M3x10s, so I'm gonna check, and if that's the case, I will make a note somewhere. The next piece is going to be the Rookery belt cradle. I know I said it was going to be like a stock build, but at this point a Rookery is basically a stock on the Rook. So this is the belt cradle piece, and inside we have 4 M3x6mm. This is just going right onto our carriage. And yeah, actually you're probably not going to want to go too tight with this because we're still going to need to slide in our belts. It's going to be easier to... okay, we're going to leave the belt cradle just kind of sitting here for now. I'm not sure if it's going to be best to put it on before or after because you have to slide the belts through. Alright, I want to move on to the motors. I'm missing a motor for an extruder. On the Fabrico kit, you have like a little 14mm for a mini Sherpa or a LDO orbiter, I believe. But I don't have an extruder, we'll say, for today, but I have 3 NEMA 17s for all of our other axes, and then I have 3 20-tooth 5mm bore pulleys. So I'm going to drop all these on, and I honestly have no idea where these should be, so I'm going to just push them flush, get one of these little set screws lined up with the flat spot and just tighten them all down. So we'll just go like that for right now. Doing is lining up the set screw with one of the flat sides on the motor. Not all of the stepper motors have that, just some of the spindles do, so Alright, I'll put these off to the side for a second. Moving on to the next step. We're going to need 16 M3x10mm screws to go into the steppers. So I think ideally you'll put your connection facing in, but you may want to mount your extruder back here, so it could get crowded. Drop our screws in, get it started, slide it forward, make sure you have them slid forward so it's not tensioned when we start our belts. And And then also, I'm only putting 2 screws in the motors right now just because I'm going to be taking this apart soon. So make sure you put all 4 in. Alright, we're going to go down to the Z motor. This one is a little bit more important. I don't think you can have the connection facing down. It'll be tight even with rubber feet off the bottom, so I would turn it sideways. And then once again, I'm only going to use 2 screws, but there's 16 total. 1 for each motor, or 4 for each motors, and there's 4 motors total. Your X and Y are A and B motors, your extruder, and then this is our Z motor. So I don't care, I'm just putting them both in on the bottom. It's not actually going to be used. If it was going to be used, you would have 4, and this is where our Z tension comes in, and it's right there, pushing up onto the motor right now. It's flexing it, so I'm not actually going to do it, but you can see it's working. Stand it back up. So, I would recommend doing this a while ago, but I forgot, and it's honestly just the same right now. So, we're going to give it a little bit of pressure, pull all this back up. Flip it over, and what did we forget? We forgot our bed. Okay, so what did I say? Long side up for right now. Back. Slide it down. Hold it up. Line it up. Push it back down. And just like that, you could have your whole bed on and off. Your bearings should be way nicer than this. This feels terrible. But that's because I did a terrible job packing them. Don't do that. Lubricate them nice. Fill them up with grease. Get a nice coat on your bearing and on your linear rods. It'll be much smoother. Alright, I messed up for like the 4th time. Put your bed on straight. The front point. Okay. This is why I said to have your bearings up. Why? Because your hot end is going to stick down. So you can level this out later, but this at least allows it to come down to where your end stop will be. Okay, let's do the Z belts really quick. It's about 1 meter per, I guess, like length around, I'm not sure. 1 meter per, about 3 total, but maybe get 4. There's a thin side and a thicker side. We'll move this side out of the way for right now. Take my belt and show you the best I can, but it'll be through the thin side, and there's a split in the center, so you might need to loop it a little bit. And then another useful thing for the tweezers. Push back up from the bottom side. Just like that. Alright, now that you got it looped through the small side back up, you can use a zip tie to go around and pinch it together. Or there's a couple mods of little belt clips on printables. So I'm going to just put this towards the end, slide it down as close as we can, and just try to slide it back over, pinch it on. So maybe that might be a little loose, so you would maybe want to put it down one more tooth later, but it's probably good because we need to slide it through the larger side, the opening in the bottom frame, and then as my belt will come down through, we need to go around our motor and back out. So we have it looped around our motor now. Pull it back up through. Going through the small side again. And same thing where we need to tuck it back down. It doesn't matter which side you do this on first. Do the top or the bottom side. Make sure it's around your flanges nicely at the top. Make sure it's around your pulley at the bottom. Take another one of your zip ties or belt clips and hold it kind of in the center. I guess it'll be easier to start one side first. Pinch it on. It's going to be a little bit flexy. So I think the goal would be to leave a little bit more slack on this one and be able to pull it tighter. So I got the belt a bit more snug here which it doesn't have to be perfectly tight, just enough so the slack is adjusted out by this. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten up my motor a little bit. You can tell it's getting tighter. So it doesn't have to be crazy tight. Just enough, like that is pretty good right there. You can adjust it later. Just kind of snug down your screws here. And normally you would want to snip this. You have a little bit of room, so give yourself maybe half an inch on either side of the beds and snip it, but I'm not going to cut it right now because I'm probably going to be using this belt for something else. Just tuck it down here, and we'll move on to the AB belts. Alright, moving on to the A and B belts, or X and Y motors. For me, it's easiest to just start where we know. So there's teeth on each one of our pulleys, and there's teeth on the belt. So just kind of wrap it around, and we'll see where we have to go. So it looks like this one is lower than this side. So we're going to go straight through all the way up to the front, around the lower bearings. I have to kind of stick it out the side and go back through around the bearings. Once again, around the bearings, and through our gantry idler. This one's a little bit tricky to get around your bearings and over to the cradle. Alright, so I cut it out for a second. We're back. Going back around our front through here. I want to pull it out through this hexagon because I can't really get it through by just going around the bearing. And yeah, see, that time it just pulled right through. And this is our lower belt. So we're going on the rail side, and we are going to pop this back off really quick. It's just going to be a little bit easier. You can keep your screws started, but loop it around. And honestly, for now, it's going to just be easier to put a belt clip on all the way at the end. You will keep the most amount of belt space on the other side. Okay, that one's on. Come back over to this side, get it back around our motor again. Now we need to go on the inside and not the outside. Feed it through, and we are back to the center. We have this upside down. Go through underneath. Wow, this belt is just barely long enough to go around this. So I'm going to need to snug it up quite a bit. So I put this on just a bit too far, so it hits the cradle before it's tensioned. So I'm going to back it off a couple teeth, feed it back through. Try to get it pretty snug, and just like that. Since I don't have flanged washers, it it slid off when I was installing it. That's not a big deal because it actually helps me gain a little bit. And that's one side right there. So I'll try to explain it a little bit better on the second belt. We have our pulley, and that's why I'll start here, because I know the belt always has to go around the pulley. Pulley to the outside of the frame, through the outside of the gantry, we had the lower side of the idlers and the motors over here on the left. So now we're going around the top. Feed it through over here. Seems like Rolo designed a nice cutout over here so it would be easier to feed through. Pull it back through. Going on the outside again. I don't know if this will be any easier for you to see. The outside. Loop it back through the bearing. We have a nice loop on the outside through the bearing. I don't have the flange bearings, so it's a little easier to slip off, but make sure the belt is centered on them. And we're gonna get this side started in the belt cradle. So I had to cut it for a second because I was looking for another belt clip, but I guess we're going to use this zip tie. Just pull this back off a little bit. Get it started right at the end of the belt so I can pull it back through quite a bit. Just leave a couple teeth out. And press it down. Since I have the screws started in here, just be careful of your rail. Get it around our bearings here. Around our top front bearing. Back to where we started, around the motor. Now we're coming on the inside. Feeding it all the way up to the front, straight through the front. And then around our bearings, and we're going back to our cradle. I'm actually going to pop this off of pulley because my belts are super short. But otherwise, if you have new belts, just try to leave yourself a little bit of length. If I can, get this belt looped around here. Otherwise, we might have to back off this side as well. So after you get your belts on, and your cradle tightens to your carriage. You're going to want to look down your belt path and then make sure that your belts are perfectly level as they go back and forth. So when you get this farther down, it shouldn't be higher up or lower. When you bring it forward, it shouldn't be higher up or lower. Another sign can be that is if like your rails are too far in and one of your belts is super tight and the other one is super loose, this can tend to just go all over. So I don't really think mine's perfectly lined up, but it seems like this is a pretty good place to go about. Just flat with the top of the spindle, and it seems pretty good. Moving on to the second to last piece, we have our Rookery key, and it seems like an M10 is a pretty good size. So it comes from the back side of our belt cradle, and you can't actually have that pushed all the way through, but the cutout sits right on top. Push it down a bit, tighten it up. Yeah, and it looks like the M5 by 10 is going to be a perfect length for that. Moving on to the next step, and you wouldn't necessarily have to do this, as long as you have like your MCU connected and a thermistor, you could test your motors with sensorless homing right now. It would fully move. I'm just going to be putting this on because you can slide this part in later. And then I would say typically for this, you're probably going to want to use two M3 by 16s to go through. There you go. Fan duct would slide right over here like this, and you would have an M3 by 6 on either side. Mine looks a little goofy right now, but I accidentally broke it, which is fine for right now. I guess we can do the bed really quick. So, Rolohaun intends that you use a glass bed, and I guess that's probably just for cost savings. Just this bed alone, let's say a free piece of aluminum, but just this PEI sheet, that's like what, 5% of the total build cost of the printer, so something minor like that, which isn't going to improve it a ton. Yeah, it's not worth it. But anyways, this was actually a free piece of aluminum. I just got it from my work. I would say it's 3 to 4 millimeters thick, and all I did was cut it to size. Looked up the Voron 0 bed holes. So there's like specs for the size of the bed and the holes. It's like centered and just 5 millimeters in, 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters, 5 millimeters. Double check it. I did this a while ago, so. But anyways, these are the super cheapo springs. I would recommend getting just like the yellow springs, and you might be able to print your own solid ones. onto the bed screws. I did this because the stock bed can be a little bit finicky, just depending on if your strings aren't long enough. Oh, top heavy with the motors on. Okay. Anyways, springs. And just literally push it into place. This is a super simple solution. You can print your own, probably with some heat insets, but I'm just using wing nuts. If you buy screw kits for just like specifically a bed, they'll have like these little hand twists, knurled nuts, I think. Screw this down. And then, like, I've already got a fair bit of tension, and there's still room for it to clear, so that's just why I have those nuts there. It's now heavy enough to overgo the resistance of the motor and the bed drops. Here's kind of a good view of it. I would say this is like the start of it, but honestly this is a majority of the printer. There's some wiring to do and a couple oddball parts, but it's pretty simple. I'm gonna pop that fan duct back off so I can flip it over and not really care about the other stuff too much. So that'll be fine. So I think the last thing today is going to be the SKR E3 Mini V3. And you could install this way back at the beginning, but I would just wait until the end in case you bump it. And for this, all I'm going to use is M3x6s right now, but you could probably go up to an M3x8 or 10 and be fine still. But M3x5 by 4 to 10 will work. So I'm going to just put 2 in there, it's whatever. And I think maybe throw this right back on quick. Show you how nice and pretty it could look. Oh, come on. And for right now, I think we're gonna call it.